Christmas morning in our Phoenix suburban home should have been magical. Instead, it became the moment I realized 28 years of my life had been built on a lie. My sister Amanda squealed with delight as she discovered the white BMW X5 sitting in our driveway, adorned with an enormous red velvet bow. My parents beamed, snapping photos like proud peacocks. Meanwhile, I unwrapped my gift, a ceramic piggy bank containing exactly 3 crumpled dollar bills. They acted like our presents were equivalent, smiling expectantly as if I should be grateful. The humiliation burned through my chest like acid. At 3 a.m., while they slept off their champagne celebration, I quietly packed my pickup truck and drove away into the desert darkness, blocking every family number from my phone. The empty streets of Phoenix stretched before me like black ribbons under the streetlights. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly, my knuckles had turned white. The radio played some cheerful holiday song that made me want to punch something. I drove aimlessly through sleeping neighborhoods, past houses where normal families probably exchanged thoughtful gifts and genuine affection. Back at my apartment, I sat on my second-hand couch staring at that ridiculous piggy bank. $3. For a man who worked 60-hour weeks as a software developer and had saved over $40,000 in his bank account. $3 from parents who had just handed my sister a $66,000 luxury vehicle. I pulled out my laptop and started going through old photo albums, something I rarely did because it always left me feeling hollow. There it was, the pattern I had tried to ignore my entire life. Amanda's sweet 16 party, $15,000 spent on decorations, catering, a DJ, and a rented venue. My 18th birthday, a grocery store cake and dinner at Denny's. Amanda's high school graduation, a week-long trip to Europe. My college graduation, they forgot to attend because Amanda had a tennis tournament. The photos told a story I had never wanted to acknowledge. Every Christmas, every birthday, every milestone, the disparity was glaring. Amanda received jewelry, electronics, designer clothes, cars. I got generic gifts that screamed afterthought, drugstore cologne, ill-fitting sweaters, gift cards to restaurants I never visited. College had been the worst part. My parents paid Amanda's full tuition at Arizona State University, plus her sorority fees, plus a monthly allowance for spending money. Meanwhile, I worked 3 jobs to afford community college night shifts at a gas station, weekend landscaping, and tutoring other students in computer programming. I lived on ramen noodles and determination, while Amanda posted Instagram photos from spring break in Cancun. Even now, with my successful career in software development, the pattern continued. When Amanda announced her engagement 2 years ago, our parents threw her an elaborate engagement party and paid for every detail of her $20,000 wedding. When I got engaged to my girlfriend Emma last year, they acknowledged it with a phone call that lasted less than 3 minutes. Emma and I ended up eloping because we couldn't afford the wedding we wanted, and my parents never even asked about it afterward. My phone started buzzing on the coffee table. Unknown numbers, which meant family members trying to reach me through different phones since I had blocked their main lines. I let it ring. Whatever they wanted to say, I wasn't ready to hear it. The damage was done, and I needed time to process the full scope of what had just happened. I found myself digging through a box of old documents I kept in my bedroom closet. Birth certificates, social security cards, school records, tax papers. As I shuffled through the papers, something caught my eye that I had never noticed before. My birth certificate looked different from Amanda's. The paper was different, the formatting was slightly off, and there was a stamp I didn't recognize. That's when it hit me like a freight train. I grabbed my laptop and searched for information about adoption records in Arizona. The more I read, the more convinced I became that I was looking at an amended birth certificate, the kind issued to adoptive parents. My hands trembled as I cross-referenced the details with Amanda's birth certificate, which I'd seen years ago when we both needed them for passport applications. Everything suddenly made horrible sense. Amanda was their biological daughter. I was adopted, and nobody had ever bothered to tell me. The phone buzzed again, this time with a voicemail notification. My father's voice slurred slightly from holiday drinking. "Joshua, you need to bring that car back right now, or we're calling the police to report it stolen." "This is ridiculous behavior and your mother is crying. Call us back immediately." I laughed out loud, a bitter sound that echoed in my empty apartment. Bring what car back? I had driven away in my own pickup truck, a 7-year-old Ford that I bought and paid for myself. If they were worried about Amanda's BMW, maybe they should ask her where it was. Morning light filtered through my apartment windows as I woke up on the couch, my neck stiff from sleeping in an awkward position. My phone showed 14 missed calls and 6 voicemails, all from blocked numbers. I decided to listen to them while making coffee. Dad's first voicemail left at 6 a.m. "Joshua, this is not a joke. That BMW is not yours to take. We know you have it, and if you don't return it by noon, we're involving law enforcement." I stopped stirring my coffee. "What BMW?" I drove away in my pickup truck. Amanda's car should still be sitting in their driveway unless she moved it herself. The second voicemail was from my mother, sobbing, "Sweetheart, please just bring the car back. We can talk about everything else, but stealing your sister's car is not the answer. We love you, but this is too far." My stomach started churning. Something was very wrong here. I grabbed my laptop and logged into my credit monitoring account, something I checked religiously every month. What I saw made my blood run cold. There, listed under my recent credit inquiries, was an auto loan application dated 3 weeks ago. $66,000 through Desert Valley Credit Union. My name, my social security number, my address. But I had never applied for any auto loan. I called the credit union immediately. After 20 minutes of holds and transfers, I reached a loan officer who confirmed my worst fears. The BMW X5 was registered in my name. The loan was in my name. The insurance was in my name. According to their records, I had personally signed all the paperwork and provided 2 forms of identification. "That's impossible," I told the representative. "I never applied for this loan. I've never even been to your branch." "Sir, I'm looking at the paperwork right now. We have your signature on file copies of your driver's license and social security card and proof of income documentation from your employer. The loan was approved, and the vehicle was released to the registered owner, which is you." I hung up and immediately drove to the DMV. The line was 45 minutes long, but I needed answers. When I finally reached the counter, the clerk confirmed what I already suspected. The BMW was registered in my name, insured in my name, and legally belonged to me according to all state records. But I never registered any BMW, I explained to the clerk, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. "Sir, someone would have needed your social security number, birth certificate, and proof of residence to register this vehicle." "Are you saying someone committed identity theft?" That word hit me like a physical blow. Identity theft. Someone in my family had stolen my identity to buy Amanda a car. I asked for copies of all the registration documents and drove straight to the law office of Sarah Martinez, an attorney I found through a Google search for identity theft lawyers. Sarah's office was small but professional, with law books lining the walls and certificates hanging behind her desk. She was probably in her 40s, with graying hair pulled back in a neat bun and the kind of direct gaze that suggested she didn't tolerate nonsense. "Tell me everything," she said after I explained why I was there. I laid out the documents I had collected, the credit report showing the loan I never applied for, the DMV records showing a car I never registered, and the dealership paperwork with a signature that looked like mine but felt wrong somehow. Sarah examined everything carefully, occasionally making notes on a legal pad. "Joshua, this is definitely identity theft, but it's more sophisticated than most cases I see. Whoever did this had access to all your personal information and knew enough about your financial situation to successfully impersonate you." "It has to be my family," I said. "They're the only ones with access to my social security number and other documents. The good news is that you're not responsible for this debt if you can prove fraud. The bad news is that proving fraud against family members is complicated, especially when the perpetrator is sophisticated enough to forge convincing documents. Sarah pulled up something on her computer. I'm checking your credit report in real time. Joshua, this BMW loan isn't the only problem. You have 3 credit cards with balances totaling $23,000. Cards you never applied for all opened within the past 6 months. My head started spinning. 3 credit cards? I don't have any credit cards except the one I've had since college. According to this, you have a Visa with an $8,000 balance, a MasterCard with a $7,000 balance, and an American Express with an $8,000 balance. All the charges appear to be for luxury goods, restaurants, and travel. I felt like I was falling through space. Someone had been living a completely different life using my identity and credit score. $23,000 in debt that I knew nothing about, plus a $66,000 car loan. My perfect credit score was being destroyed while I worked and saved responsibly. There's more, Sarah continued, scrolling through additional information. I see automatic payments being deducted from your savings account. $547 monthly for the BMW loan. The payment started 3 weeks ago. I checked my bank account immediately. Sure enough, there was a withdrawal I hadn't noticed labeled Auto Loan Payment Desert Valley CU. They had somehow gained access to my banking information and set up automatic payments without my knowledge or consent. Sarah, what do I do? How do I prove this was fraud? We need to gather evidence immediately. I want you to request security footage from the dealership showing whoever signed the paperwork. We need to file a police report for identity theft, and we need to contact all these creditors to dispute the charges and freeze your accounts. She handed me a thick folder of documents to fill out. Joshua, I have to ask you something difficult. Are you absolutely certain you didn't sign these documents while intoxicated or under stress, or during some period where you might not remember clearly? The question stung, but I understood why she had to ask. Sarah, I've never been to that dealership. I've never applied for credit cards from those companies. I check my credit report monthly and my bank account weekly. Someone stole my identity and has been using it for months without my knowledge. Then we're going to prove that and hold them accountable. But you should know that prosecuting family members for identity theft often destroys relationships permanently. Are you prepared for that possibility? I thought about the piggy bank with $3, about 28 years of being treated like an afterthought, about Amanda getting everything handed to her while I worked for every dollar I earned. Sarah, I think those relationships were destroyed long before I walked into your office. 3 days later, Sarah called me with news that made my identity theft problem seem simple by comparison. I was sitting in my cubicle at work trying to concentrate on debugging code, while my personal life fell apart around me. Joshua, you need to come to my office immediately. What I've discovered is bigger than credit card fraud. I took the afternoon off and drove to her office, my mind racing through possibilities. What could be worse than $23,000 in fraudulent credit card debt and a car loan I never signed for? Sarah's expression was grim as she spread documents across her conference table. I've been investigating your identity theft case, and I discovered something that changes everything. According to state business registration records, you are listed as the managing partner of a company called Henderson Family Construction, LLC. That's impossible. I work in software development. I've never been involved in any construction business. The business was registered 5 years ago, with you listed as managing partner and primary owner. Your social security number is on all the formation documents, your signature is on the operating agreement, and you're listed as the primary contact for all state and federal tax obligations. I stared at the documents she showed me. Henderson Family Construction, LLC. My name listed as Joshua Michael Henderson, Managing Partner. My social security number. My home address. Documents that appeared to have my signature, though I had never seen them before in my life. Sarah, my parents always told me they worked for other people. Dad said he was a foreman for Southwest Desert Construction, Mom said she did bookkeeping for various small businesses. I had no idea they owned a company. Well, according to these records, they don't own it. You do. You're listed as owning 65% of the company, with your father owning 20% and your mother owning 15%. Your sister Amanda is listed as the company secretary and treasurer. My legs felt weak. I sat down heavily in one of Sarah's chairs. What kind of business is this company involved in? Sarah pulled up more documents on her laptop. Based on the tax records I was able to access, Henderson Family Construction has been quite successful. They've completed projects worth over $2 million in the past 5 years. Residential construction, commercial renovations, government contracts for municipal buildings. If the business is so successful, where's all the money? My parents are always complaining about money troubles. They drive old cars, live in a modest house, never seem to have extra cash for anything. That's where things get interesting, Joshua. The business bank accounts show regular large withdrawals for owner distributions and management fees, but instead of those payments going to you as the supposed managing partner, they've been funding a very different lifestyle. She showed me bank statements that made me dizzy. Regular payments to luxury apartment complexes, high-end car dealerships, designer stores, exclusive restaurants. The money from my supposed business was funding Amanda's entire lifestyle. Sarah, how is this legal? How can they use my identity to run a business and then spend all the profits without me knowing? It's not legal, Joshua. What they've done constitutes business fraud, identity theft, and tax fraud. But here's the worst part. She pulled up another document. The business owes $180,000 in unpaid federal taxes. As the managing partner on record, you're personally liable for that debt. The room started spinning. I gripped the arms of my chair to steady myself. $180,000, Sarah. I don't have that kind of money. It gets worse. The IRS has already begun investigating Henderson Family Construction for tax evasion and employing undocumented workers. If they determine that you knowingly participated in tax fraud and illegal labor practices, you could face federal charges. I felt like I was drowning. But I didn't participate in anything. I didn't even know this business existed. I believe you, Joshua, but proving that to the IRS is going to be challenging. The paperwork shows a sophisticated operation that's been running for years. Someone would need detailed knowledge of business law and tax regulations to set this up. Sarah pulled up phone records on her computer. I've also been reviewing call logs associated with the business phone number. There are hundreds of calls between the business line and Amanda's personal cell phone. Calls to contractors, suppliers, government offices. Amanda has been actively involved in running this business. So Amanda knew about all of this. Not only did she know about it, Joshua, she appears to have been the primary operator. The business address is listed as her apartment. The business email account is linked to her personal Gmail. She's been signing contracts and managing projects while you were listed as the legal owner. I thought about all the times Amanda had seemed to have unlimited spending money despite not having a regular job. All the time she bought expensive clothes, traveled to exotic locations, lived in apartments that should have been beyond her means. She had been funding her lifestyle with profits from a business that was legally mine but that I knew nothing about. Sarah, what happens if I can't prove I was innocent in all this? Joshua, if the IRS determines that you were involved in tax fraud and illegal business practices, you could face up to 5 years in federal prison and fines of up to $250,000. Even if you avoid criminal charges, you're still liable for the unpaid taxes, penalties, and interest. I stood up and walked to her office window, looking out at the Phoenix skyline. Somewhere out there, my family was living their lives as if nothing had happened, while my entire future was collapsing around me. There's one more thing, Joshua. Sarah's voice was gentle but serious. Based on the pattern of identity theft and the sophistication of this fraud, I don't think this stopped with you. I think we need to investigate whether other family members have been victims as well. I spent the next 2 days gathering evidence with Sarah's help. We had copies of forged signatures, business documents with my stolen identity bank records showing where the money went, and phone logs proving Amanda's involvement. It was time to confront my family with the truth. Saturday morning, I drove to my parents' house with Sarah following in her own car. The white BMW was still in the driveway, looking pristine and expensive under the Arizona sun. Seeing it there, knowing it was registered in my name, and that I was legally responsible for the loan payments made my anger burn hotter. I knocked on the front door instead of using my key. This wasn't a family visit anymore. My mother answered, her face lighting up with relief when she saw me. "Joshua, sweetheart, we've been so worried." Come in, come in. "We need to talk about this misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding, Mom, and we're going to talk out here." My father appeared behind her, his expression hardening when he saw Sarah standing beside me. "Who's this Joshua? What's going on?" "This is my attorney, Sarah Martinez. We're here to discuss the identity theft and business fraud you've been committing using my personal information." The color drained from my mother's face. My father's jaw tightened, but he tried to maintain his composure. "I don't know what you're talking about. You're being dramatic about a simple family disagreement." Amanda emerged from inside the house wearing designer clothes I now knew were purchased with money from my stolen business. When she saw Sarah holding a briefcase full of legal documents, her expression shifted from confused to calculating. "Joshua," Amanda said with a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes, "you're really going to bring lawyers into a family matter over a silly Christmas gift misunderstanding?" I pulled out copies of the BMW registration and loan documents. "Amanda, this $66,000 car is registered in my name. The loan is in my name. The insurance is in my name. Someone forged my signature to buy you a car, and that someone had access to all my personal information." My father stepped forward. "Now wait just a minute. Nobody forged anything. You signed those papers yourself." "Dad, I've never been to Desert Valley Credit Union. I've never applied for an auto loan. I've never signed registration papers for a BMW. Someone stole my identity, and based on the evidence we've gathered, it was someone in this family." Sarah opened her briefcase and pulled out the business registration documents. "Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, your son, is also listed as the managing partner of Henderson Family Construction, a business he knew nothing about until 3 days ago. A business that owes $180,000 in federal taxes." My mother gasped and sank into one of the porch chairs. "Joshua, we can explain everything. You don't understand the situation." "Then explain it," I said. "Explain how my identity was used to register a business I never knew existed. Explain how profits from that business have been funding Amanda's lifestyle while I worked 60-hour weeks and saved every dollar I earned." Amanda's sweet facade finally cracked. "You want to know the truth, Joshua Fine? Here's the truth. You've always been jealous of me because Mom and Dad love me more. You've been planning to steal money from the family business for months, and we were just protecting ourselves." My father nodded. "Amanda's right. She came to us 6 months ago with evidence that you were planning to embezzle from the construction business. She showed us emails, text messages, financial documents proving you were going to clean out the accounts and disappear." I stared at them in disbelief. "What emails? What evidence? I didn't even know the business existed." Amanda pulled out her phone and started scrolling through screenshots. "Here. Look at these emails you sent me discussing your plan to take the business money and start over in another state." Sarah stepped forward and examined Amanda's phone. "These emails are dated from an account that doesn't exist in your brother's email records. The IP addresses show they were sent from this address, not from Joshua's apartment. These are fabricated." "That's impossible," my mother said weakly. "Amanda showed us everything. She had proof." "I have proof too," I said, pulling out bank statements. "Proof that someone has been using my stolen identity to fund Amanda's lifestyle. Rent payments for her luxury apartment, car payments for vehicles I never purchased, credit card bills for shopping sprees I never went on. Amanda's expression turned vicious. "You're pathetic, Joshua." "You've always been pathetic. Even when we adopted you, you were a disappointment. We gave you a home, a family opportunities, and you turned into a bitter, jealous loser who can't stand seeing his sister succeed." The words hit me like physical blows, but they also confirmed what I had suspected. "So you admit I'm adopted, and you admit that you've been treating me differently my entire life because of it." My father looked uncomfortable. "Joshua being adopted doesn't mean we love you less. It just means Amanda is our biological daughter, and we have special obligations to her future." "Special obligations that include committing federal crimes," Sarah interjected. "Mr. Henderson using your son's identity to register a business without his knowledge is identity theft. Using his credit to fund your daughter's lifestyle is fraud. Employing undocumented workers and evading taxes are federal crimes." "We didn't employ any undocumented workers," my mother protested. Amanda laughed bitterly. "Of course we did, Mom. How do you think we kept labor costs low enough to undercut our competition? Joshua knew about it. He approved all the hiring decisions." My father rounded on Amanda. "Amanda, shut up. Don't say another word." But it was too late. Amanda was angry and speaking without thinking. "Joshua's been planning to frame us for months. He set up fake business records to make it look like we were running everything while he collected the profits. Then he was going to disappear with all the money and leave us holding the bag." Sarah was taking notes rapidly. "Ms. Henderson, are you saying your brother knew about the business operations?" "I'm saying he's been the mastermind from the beginning. Everything we did was his idea. The tax evasion, the illegal workers, the money laundering through shell companies. We're all victims of his manipulation." My mother started crying. "Amanda, what are you saying?" "Joshua didn't know anything about the business. You told us he was planning to steal from us, but you never said he was already involved." The truth was finally emerging. Amanda had been running a sophisticated con game, manipulating our parents into believing I was the threat while she used my identity to commit crimes. She had convinced them that they were protecting the family from me, when in reality she was protecting herself from getting caught. Neighbors had started to notice the commotion. Mrs. Rodriguez from next door was pretending to water her plants while obviously listening to every word. Mr. Chen from across the street was standing on his front porch, making no pretense of hiding his interest. That's when the police arrived. Detective James Murphy stepped out of an unmarked car and approached our group. "We received a noise complaint and reports of a domestic disturbance. Is everything all right here?" Sarah stepped forward and introduced herself. "Detective, I'm representing Mr. Henderson in an identity theft and business fraud case. We're here to confront the perpetrators with evidence of their crimes." Amanda immediately switched tactics. "Officer, my brother is threatening our family. He's been making wild accusations and acting erratically. We're concerned for our safety." But Detective Murphy was experienced enough to recognize the dynamics at play. He looked at the legal documents Sarah provided, examined the evidence of identity theft, and listened carefully as I explained the situation. "Ms. Henderson," he said to Amanda, "you just admitted to several federal crimes in front of witnesses. You stated that your family business employed undocumented workers, evaded taxes, and engaged in money laundering. You also admitted to fabricating evidence against your brother." Amanda's face went white. "I didn't mean that. I was upset and speaking hypothetically." "Ma'am, there's nothing hypothetical about business registration documents and tax records. This appears to be a complex financial fraud case that needs federal investigation." Detective Murphy called for backup and began the process of officially documenting everything that had been said. My parents stood in shocked silence as they realized Amanda had manipulated them into committing crimes, then tried to frame me for her own criminal activity. As Amanda was being questioned by the detective, my mother grabbed my arm. "Joshua, we thought we were protecting the family business from you. Amanda showed us evidence that you were planning to steal everything. We never meant for this to happen." I looked at my parents and saw two frightened, confused people who had been expertly manipulated by their own daughter. Mom Amanda has been using my identity for years to commit crimes. She convinced you I was the threat to protect herself from getting caught. My father sat down heavily on the porch steps. "What have we done?" 2 weeks later, I found myself in a sterile conference room at the Federal Building in downtown Phoenix, surrounded by FBI agents, IRS investigators, and enough paperwork to fill a small library. What had started as a family dispute over Christmas gifts had exploded into a multi-state federal investigation. Agent Lisa Rodriguez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s, spread photographs across the conference table. "Mr. Henderson, what you've uncovered is much bigger than simple identity theft. Your sister has been running sophisticated fraud schemes across Arizona, Nevada, and California for at least 3 years." I stared at the photographs showing Amanda at various locations, banks, government offices, luxury hotels, car dealerships. In some pictures, she was clearly presenting identification documents and signing paperwork. In others, she was meeting with people I didn't recognize. "Agent Rodriguez, how many victims are we talking about?" "So far, we've identified 17 separate victims whose identities were stolen and used in various schemes. Your sister created fake investment companies, fraudulent construction businesses, and elaborate pension scams targeting elderly relatives and family friends." She pulled out a thick folder. "Your ex-girlfriend Emma Walsh was one of the first victims. 3 years ago, Amanda used Emma's identity to open credit accounts and take out personal loans. Emma's credit score dropped from 750 to 420 in 6 months. The mention of Emma hit me like a punch to the stomach. Emma never told me her credit was ruined. She never said anything about identity theft. According to our interview with Ms. Walsh, she didn't know what was happening. She attributed the credit problems to administrative errors and spent years trying to dispute the charges through normal channels. She had no idea someone had systematically stolen her identity. Agent Rodriguez showed me more documents. Amanda used your identity as a successful businessman to gain credibility with her victims. She told elderly relatives that you were running a successful investment firm and convinced them to transfer their retirement savings for safekeeping during market volatility. How much money are we talking about? Your grandmother's retirement account, $85,000. Your great-uncle Robert's pension fund, $62,000. Your cousin Michael's disability settlement, $43,000. All told, Amanda stole over $400,000 from family members using your identity and reputation. I felt sick. These were people who trusted me, who thought they were investing their life savings with their successful relative. Instead, they had been victimized by a sophisticated criminal who happened to share their DNA. Agent Rodriguez continued. The construction business was just one part of a larger money laundering operation. Amanda created multiple shell companies, all with different family members listed as owners without their knowledge. She moved money between accounts to hide the source of funds and make the stolen money appear legitimate. Were my parents involved in all of this? Based on our investigation, your parents appear to have been victims of manipulation rather than willing participants. Amanda convinced them that you were planning to embezzle from the family business, and they believed they were protecting themselves from you. She showed me transcripts of recorded phone conversations between Amanda and my parents. Reading them made my heart ache for two people who had been expertly manipulated by their own daughter. Amanda's voice recorded during a phone call to our mother, "Mom, I found more evidence that Joshua is planning to steal from the business. He's been transferring money to offshore accounts and setting up fake companies to hide the theft. If we don't act soon, he's going to disappear with everything." My mother's response, "Sweetheart, are you sure Joshua has always been honest about money?" "Amanda, Mom, he's been planning this for months. I have emails, bank records, everything. We need to protect the business by transferring ownership to legitimate family members before he can steal it. The conversation showed a pattern of psychological manipulation that had convinced my parents they were victims of my supposed criminal activity when in reality they were unwitting accomplices to Amanda's actual crimes. Agent Rodriguez, what's going to happen to my parents? They'll face reduced charges in exchange for their cooperation and testimony against Amanda. The evidence shows they genuinely believed they were protecting themselves from financial fraud rather than participating in it. She opened another file. Mr. Henderson, we need to discuss Amanda's current legal strategy. Her attorney is preparing a defense that portrays you as the mastermind of all these crimes. That's ridiculous. I didn't even know about most of this until 2 weeks ago. We know that, but Amanda has been preparing for this possibility for months. She's created a paper trail designed to make it appear that you were the criminal and she was your victim. Agent Rodriguez showed me fabricated emails, doctored bank records, and forged documents that painted a picture of me as a sophisticated criminal who had manipulated my innocent sister into helping with my schemes. She's claiming that you groomed her from childhood to be your accomplice, that you threatened her family if she didn't cooperate, and that you promised to marry her off to a wealthy man if she helped you steal enough money. The sophistication of Amanda's backup plan was terrifying. She had spent months creating false evidence to support a narrative that would make her appear to be my victim rather than my victimizer. The good news, Agent Rodriguez continued, is that Amanda's story doesn't hold up under scrutiny. The digital forensics on these documents show they were created recently, not over the course of years, as she claims. The email accounts she used to create fake correspondence between you were opened from her computer, not yours. She pulled up computer records showing IP addresses, browser histories, and digital fingerprints that proved Amanda had created all the false evidence herself. There's also the matter of her cellmate. Her cellmate, Amanda, was arrested 2 days ago on federal charges. She's being held at the Federal Detention Center pending trial. Her cellmate is a federal informant who has been recording their conversations. Agent Rodriguez played an audio recording that made my blood run cold. Amanda's voice talking to another woman in a jail cell. My idiot brother actually believed he was adopted his whole life. I convinced my parents he was planning to steal from them so they'd help me frame him for crimes I was committing. If everything goes according to plan, he'll take the blame for everything, and I'll walk away with a victim story. The other woman's voice. What if he proves his innocence? Amanda, he can't. I've been setting him up for 3 years. By the time this goes to trial, there will be so much evidence pointing to him that no jury will believe he wasn't involved. Hearing Amanda's cold calculation in her own voice was like listening to a stranger. This wasn't the sister I had grown up with, the person I had protected and defended despite years of unfair treatment. This was a predator who had been systematically destroying lives while building herself an escape plan. And Mr. Henderson, Agent Rodriguez said gently, I know this is difficult to process. Often in family fraud cases, the victims struggle with feelings of guilt and responsibility. You need to understand that nothing you did caused this situation. Amanda is a sophisticated criminal who exploited family relationships to commit serious crimes. I sat in that conference room for another 2 hours, reviewing evidence and providing testimony about my relationship with Amanda and my parents. When I finally left the federal building, I felt like I was walking in a different world than the one I had inhabited that morning. My phone had 17 missed calls from my mother. I listened to her voicemails in my car before driving home. Joshua, the FBI searched our house today. They took computers, files, boxes of documents. Your father is in the hospital. He had chest pains when they arrested Amanda. Please call us. We don't understand what's happening, but we believe you now. We believe you about everything. 6 months later, I sat in federal district court watching Amanda's trial unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. The prosecution had built an airtight case against her with evidence ranging from digital forensics to recorded confessions. Her expensive attorney had tried every defense strategy imaginable, but the evidence was overwhelming. The turning point came when Emma took the witness stand. My ex-girlfriend, now happily married to someone else, testified about 3 years of financial destruction that she had never understood until the FBI investigation revealed the truth. I applied for a mortgage in 2019 and was rejected because of debts I had never incurred, Emma testified. My credit score had dropped by over 300 points because of accounts I never opened and loans I never applied for. I spent thousands of dollars hiring credit repair companies and financial advisors trying to fix problems I didn't create. Amanda's attorney tried to suggest that Emma was lying or mistaken, but the documentary evidence was undeniable. Bank records, credit applications, security footage from multiple locations showing Amanda using Emma's identification documents. The prosecutor asked Emma a question that silenced the entire courtroom. Ms. Walsh, did you ever suspect that your ex-boyfriend Joshua Henderson was involved in the identity theft that destroyed your credit? Emma looked directly at Amanda. Never. Joshua was the most honest person I knew. He worked multiple jobs to pay for college, saved every penny he earned, and never spent money he didn't have. If someone had told me he was involved in financial fraud, I would have known they were lying. Amanda's face remained impassive, but I could see the calculation in her eyes. Even now, sitting at the defendant's table, facing years in federal prison, she was looking for angles and opportunities. The most damaging testimony came from our former business partners. Men and women who had worked with Henderson Family Construction testified about Amanda's role in day-to-day operations, her knowledge of illegal labor practices, and her instructions to falsify tax documents. Carlos Mendoza, a subcontractor who had worked with us for 2 years, testified that Amanda had specifically instructed him to hire undocumented workers and pay them in cash to avoid taxes and labor regulations. She told me that her brother Joshua had approved the arrangement and that as long as we kept labor costs low, everyone would make more money. Carlos testified. When I asked to speak with Joshua directly about the legal risks, Amanda said he was too busy with other projects and that I should work through her. The prosecutor introduced phone records showing hundreds of calls between Amanda and various contractors, suppliers, and government officials. All business that she had conducted while I was working my regular job in software development, unaware that a construction company existed in my name. But the prosecution's strongest evidence was Amanda herself. The jail recordings revealed not just her confession to framing me, but her detailed plans for expanding her criminal operation. In one recording, she discussed plans to steal identities from our cousins in California and start fake investment companies targeting their friends and colleagues. In another, she talked about marrying a wealthy man and using his resources to fund even larger fraud schemes. Amanda's attorney made a last-ditch effort to portray her as a victim of my supposed manipulation, but even he seemed to understand that the evidence made his client's story impossible to believe. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecutor said in her closing argument, Amanda Henderson is not a victim. She is a predator who exploited family relationships to commit serious crimes against people who trusted her. She stole her brother's identity, manipulated her parents into becoming unwitting accomplices, and destroyed the financial lives of elderly relatives who thought they were investing with a family member they could trust. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: identity theft wire, fraud, tax, evasion, money laundering, and conspiracy. Amanda was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, plus full restitution to all victims. As the judge read the sentence, Amanda finally showed emotion. Not remorse for her victims, but anger that her carefully constructed plans had failed. She turned and stared at me with such hatred that the bailiff stepped closer to her. But I felt no satisfaction in her conviction. only sadness for the family that had been destroyed by her choices and relief that the nightmare was finally over. After the trial, my parents and I met with a family counselor, recommended by Agent Rodriguez. The sessions were difficult and painful, but necessary for any hope of rebuilding our relationship. Mom, Dad, I need to understand how you could believe Amanda's lies about me for so long, I said during one particularly difficult session. My mother cried as she explained, Joshua, we knew you were adopted, but we thought it didn't matter. When Amanda came to us with evidence that you were planning to steal from the family business, it confirmed our worst fears about what we had done wrong as parents. What do you mean? My father spoke up. We adopted you when Amanda was 5 years old. She had trouble adjusting to having a sibling, and we made a lot of mistakes trying to balance her needs with yours. We overcompensated by giving her extra attention and privileges, thinking it would help her accept you as her brother. The family counselor nodded. This is a common pattern in families with both adopted and biological children. Parents often struggle with guilt about perceived favoritism and make choices that inadvertently create the very problems they're trying to avoid. Over the course of several months, we worked through decades of dysfunctional family patterns. My parents acknowledged that they had treated Amanda differently, from me not out of malice, but out of misguided attempts to manage family dynamics. Joshua. My mother said during one session, we realize now that our choices pushed you away and enabled Amanda's manipulation. We gave her special treatment because we thought she needed it, but we created a monster who felt entitled to whatever she wanted. The counseling helped, but rebuilding trust took time. My parents faced misdemeanor charges related to the business fraud and were sentenced to probation and community service. They lost most of their savings to legal fees and restitution payments. I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I chose to take over Henderson Family Construction, legitimately restructuring it as an ethical business that employed legal workers and followed all tax regulations. Joshua? Sarah asked me, why would you want to be involved in the business that caused so much trouble? Because it wasn't the business that was the problem. It was the way Amanda was running it. I have the skills to make it successful legally, and I can use the profits to help the people she victimized. I hired Carlos Mendoza as my operations manager and several other workers who had been exploited by Amanda's illegal labor practices. We focused on residential construction and renovation projects, building a reputation for honest work and fair treatment of employees. Within a year, Henderson Family Construction had become profitable while operating completely within legal guidelines. I used part of the profits to establish a victim assistance fund that helped family members whose savings had been stolen by Amanda. The most meaningful moment came when Emma contacted me to thank me for her restitution payment. We met for coffee at a small cafe in Scottsdale, and I was amazed by how well she was doing, despite everything she had endured. Joshua, I need you to know that I never blamed you for what happened to my credit, she said. Even when I didn't understand what was causing the problems, I knew you would never hurt me financially. Emma, I'm so sorry you went through that. If I had known what Amanda was doing, you couldn't have known. She was very good at hiding her crimes and manipulating people. I'm just glad the truth finally came out. We talked for 2 hours about our lives, our careers, and our families. Emma was happily married with a young daughter, and her credit had been fully restored thanks to the FBI investigation. She had even bought her first house using a mortgage that reflected her real financial history. Joshua, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Are you happy? I know this whole experience must have been traumatic, but you seem different, more confident, more centered. I thought about her question. Emma discovering the truth about my family was devastating, but it was also liberating. For 28 years, I thought there was something wrong with me that made my parents love Amanda more. Learning that I was adopted and that Amanda had been manipulating everyone helped me understand that their treatment of me was never about my worth as a person. 2 years after that Christmas morning that changed my life, I was sitting in my new office at Henderson Family Construction, looking out at a construction site where my crew was building affordable housing for first-time home buyers. My business phone rang with another call from a potential client. My bank account showed healthy profits from ethical work, and my calendar was filled with appointments that excited rather than drained me. My parents and I had managed to rebuild our relationship, though it looked very different from before. They attended family counseling regularly and had learned to communicate honestly about their feelings and mistakes. We had dinner together once a month, during which we focused on moving forward rather than relitigating the past. Joshua. My mother said during our most recent dinner, "I need to apologize again for not seeing what Amanda was doing to you all those years. Mom, we've been through this in counseling. You and Dad were manipulated by someone who was very skilled at deception. What matters now is that we're building something better." My father nodded. "Son, we're proud of what you've done with the business, turning something that was corrupt into something that helps people and communities. The business had grown beyond my expectations. We now employed 15 people full-time, all receiving fair wages, health insurance, and profit-sharing bonuses. We specialized in affordable housing projects and renovation work for elderly homeowners, often charging below market rates because we could afford to prioritize service over maximum profit. Last Christmas was the first holiday celebration our family had shared since the BMW incident. Instead of expensive gifts, we exchanged meaningful presents that showed we actually knew and cared about each other. I gave my parents a photo album documenting the construction projects we had completed to help local families. They gave me a handwritten letter expressing their gratitude for my forgiveness and their pride in the man I had become. The biggest surprise came when Emma called me in November with an unexpected request. "Joshua, this might sound strange, but would you be interested in having dinner with my family? My husband and daughter would like to meet the person who made sure I got justice for what happened to my credit." I accepted the invitation and discovered that Emma's husband, Mark, was a financial planner who specialized in helping identity theft victims rebuild their credit and financial stability. We ended up collaborating on a new initiative to provide free financial counseling services to victims of family fraud. Most people don't realize how devastating family financial fraud can be, Mark explained over dinner. When strangers steal your identity, it's traumatic but not personal. When family members destroy your financial life, it attacks your sense of trust and belonging in the world. That conversation inspired me to start speaking at fraud victim support groups, sharing my story, and offering hope to people who were struggling with similar betrayals. The most common question I received was always the same: "How did you forgive your parents when they chose to believe your sister over you?" My answer evolved over time, but the core message remained consistent. Forgiveness doesn't mean pretending the hurt didn't happen or that the choices weren't wrong. Forgiveness means choosing to build something better from the wreckage of what was destroyed. The speaking engagements led to opportunities I never could have imagined. I was invited to testify before a congressional subcommittee about the need for stronger protections against family identity theft. I consulted with law enforcement agencies about recognizing patterns of financial manipulation within families. I even co-authored an article for a financial planning magazine about helping clients rebuild relationships after family fraud. But the most meaningful moment came 6 months ago when I received a letter from Amanda in prison. After 2 years of silence, she had written to me asking if we could talk. I drove to the Federal Correctional Facility in Tucson on a Saturday morning, not knowing what to expect. Amanda looked older and thinner than I remembered, and her usual confident demeanor had been replaced by something that might have been genuine humility. "Joshua, I know you have no reason to listen to me, but I needed to say something to you in person." I waited for her to continue. "I've been in therapy here working with a counselor who specializes in personality disorders. She's helped me understand that what I did to you, to our parents, to Emma, and the other victims wasn't just criminal behavior. It was a pattern of manipulation and exploitation that started when I was very young. Amanda paused, clearly struggling with what to say next. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve forgiveness for what I did. But I wanted you to know that I finally understand how much damage I caused, not just financially, but emotionally. You deserved so much better from a sister. We talked for an hour about our childhood, about the choices that led to her criminal behavior, and about the possibility of rebuilding some kind of relationship after her release. It wasn't a Hollywood reconciliation scene, but it was a real conversation between two adults who were trying to understand how their family had become so dysfunctional. Amanda, I'm not ready to forgive you completely, but I'm willing to stay open to the possibility if you continue working on yourself and making amends to the people you hurt. She nodded. That's more than I expected and more than I deserve. Thank you for coming here. As I drove home from the prison, I reflected on how much my life had changed since that Christmas morning 2 years ago. The $3 in a ceramic piggy bank had forced me to confront painful truths about my family, but those truths had ultimately set me free to build the life I actually wanted rather than the life I thought I was supposed to want. Henderson Family Construction now generates enough revenue to support not just my employees and their families, but also a charitable foundation that provides interest-free loans to identity theft victims who need help rebuilding their financial lives. We've helped over 200 people restore their credit, pay off fraudulent debts, and regain their financial independence. My personal life has also found a healthy balance. I'm dating Jessica, a teacher I met through the victim support group Speaking Circuit. She's the first woman I've been involved with who knew the complete truth about my family situation from the beginning. And our relationship is built on the kind of honesty and mutual respect that I never experienced growing up. Joshua. Jessica said to me recently, "What do you think would have happened if your parents had given you a thoughtful gift instead of that piggy bank?" It was a question that had occurred to me many times. I think Amanda would have continued stealing identities and committing fraud until she was eventually caught. My parents would have remained unwitting accomplices to her crimes. Emma and the other victims would never have received justice or restitution. The truth would have come out eventually, but probably in a way that caused even more damage. So, in a strange way, that insulting gift was actually a blessing. It was the catalyst for discovering truths that needed to be revealed. Sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are, because that's when you learn exactly who you are. Standing in my office today looking out at a construction crew building homes for families who deserve safe and affordable housing, I understand that the real inheritance my adoptive family gave me wasn't money or property or unconditional love. It was the opportunity to choose what kind of person I wanted to become when faced with betrayal, injustice, and the collapse of everything I thought I knew about my place in the world. I chose to become someone who builds rather than destroys, who helps, rather than exploits, who tells the truth, even when it's painful, rather than constructing elaborate lies to avoid responsibility. I chose to become someone who recognizes that family isn't about sharing DNA or maintaining traditions, but about showing up for each other with honesty, integrity, and genuine care. The $3 in that ceramic piggy bank taught me something worth far more than any luxury car or expensive gift, that my worth as a person isn't determined by how other people choose to treat me, but by how I choose to respond when life reveals its hardest truths. And that lesson has made all the difference. So let me ask you this. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone's treatment of you revealed more about them than about you? When what seemed like rejection or dismissal actually freed you to become who you were really meant to be? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below, because I've learned that shared experiences of overcoming family dysfunction can help others find their own path to healing and independence. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like to help others find it who might need to hear this message. Subscribe to hear more stories about people who chose growth over bitterness when life forced them to confront difficult truths. And please share this with anyone you know who might be struggling with family dysfunction or financial manipulation, because sometimes knowing that others have walked this path and found their way to the other side can provide the hope needed to take that first step toward freedom. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the most painful revelations lead to the most beautiful transformations. I hope your own journey brings you the peace, purpose, and authentic relationships that you deserve.